Welcome, Allie, to my channel here. Looking forward to talking with you. If you wouldn't mind, give the 30,000, maybe 50,000 foot view of who you are and where you're at.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Allie Mellen. I'm an analyst on the security and risk team at Forrester. I cover security operations, people, processes, technology in the SOC, including SIEM, SOAR, EDR, XDR, security analytics. It's great to be here.
Yeah, cool. And you've been at Forrester for what, 6 months now?
6 months. It feels like a
10
week,
years,
but it's not yet.
You're
But
into
yeah,
dog
it's
years at
6
Forrester.
months.
Yeah, so every month is actually a decade, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a ride so far.
So what's the worst interaction you've had so far with a vendor? Because that was always the bar for me. Is like, and you don't have to say the name, but like, what's the, I'll tell you what I've had throw at me. But what's the worst one so far that's happened? And you haven't even done a wave yet, so wait till you do a wave.
Yeah, yeah. Ooh, the worst interaction. You know what? Honestly, what's the worst is when the executives that are on the vendor side bully the analyst relations person. That pisses me off to no end. It's just, I have to like stop them and be like, what are you doing right now? This isn't like making things better for you. How about you?
Pretty foul, right? When you know some exec's just going to go beat up on somebody else to kind of put some leverage on it. Like, wow, what a dick move,
Yeah, especially like in front of the analyst. Like this is not going to go well.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you from personal experience. My proudest moment at Forrester was when I wrote a wave and someone was very unhappy with what I wrote. And on the post-wave analysis call with about 20 people on the phone, the guy called me and I'm quoting here, a technically biased fucking idiot with the folks on the phone. It was great.
See, I've kicked off a wave, but I have not finished it. So I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I'm sure it's going to be interesting.
The fun thing too is like you really sit there and you go like in your mind you thought this would help. Like
what did you think was going to happen?
Like now I'm going to go, oh well, let me go change all this.
Yeah. Now we're best friends.
Right. So with all the research you're doing, obviously I'm too poor to read through all the super valuable protected stuff, but I keep up with the blogs and everything else. You just recently put some stuff out there about SIEM, and I'd love to pick your brain about that because I honestly don't know how I feel about SIEM anymore. Like I ran a SOC in some organizations, and I've been a SOC analyst, and I've seen SIEM kind of do this thing where it's been super hot and then it was kind of not, and then now it's sort of whatever. But can you run through like what that was and what you got out of it?
Definitely. So kind of similar to you, I won't name names, but the first time when I was on the practitioner side, the first time that I had to use the SIEM, I almost quit because I was like, this is not for me. This is awful. But things have improved dramatically since then. And one of the things that I found at Forrester is that the constant conversation is like, oh, it would take you weeks to do this query in the SIEM, or, oh, security teams hate their SIEM. But that is not the perspective that I get from our end user clients at all. The SIEM is a critical part of the SOC, and they would be, in a lot of cases, they say that they would be lost without it. They get frustrated over how much it costs, but ultimately it's a very important piece of the SOC for them. So the reason that I wanted to write that blog, really calling out the lies that security vendors tell about the SIEM, is because they're just so blatant, and I swear I can't go a day without hearing one. So I, of course, just based on the research that I've done so far, the meetings with vendors and end user clients that I've done so far, I kind of compiled a list, and then I posted to Twitter asking people, like, what are the biggest myths you've heard about SIEM? What are your perspectives on SIEM? And the results were really interesting because it showed that a lot of people actually not only like, but love their SIEM, which is really surprising to me. But yeah, the data is just very different than the story that the security vendors tell when they're trying to win competitive deals.
Yeah, so line number one, SIEMs are only good for compliance. And I think what I looked at that, like one of the things that immediately jumped out to me was you said line number one, SIMs only good for compliance. And then the part below that says security analytics platforms are pushing hard for differentiation in the detection response space. And I mean, I think that's sort of worth exploring a little bit, because a lot of folks, when they say SIM, they just think of the, what do they call it? Like the Eye of Sauron thing that's going to be the one ring to see and rule them all. And then that's not really it. Like is it fair to you, do you think, to say that we've moved into analytics, orchestration, security platform instead of just SIM?
Definitely. Yeah. So at Forrester, we call it security analytics platform. But the market kind of drifts between that and just calling it the SIM, I think, because it's also shorter, so it's more convenient. But really what it is a security analytics platform at the end of the day. And it's about doing more than just logging and compliance, but also addressing those detection and ultimately response use cases, which we see with the convergence of SIM and SOAR. And now that we've kind of reached that convergence, and most SIMs are offering some type of automation orchestration element for response, that's where we've seen them really convert into security analytics platforms. And really, this is where the differentiation is happening. This is where the really cool stuff is happening. And a lot of solutions are doing it well, especially compared to the ways that people talk about it generally. I've seen a lot of security teams that make really good use out of their security analytics platform, and that combination really helps them.
Yeah, because I mean, the issue that I have with SIM still is that folks seem to look at it as, you can see lots of stuff. And I think you even said that in your blog. You can see lots of stuff, but if you're not able to act on it, then it's kind of like walking into the doctor's office and he goes, "You're really sick." And then they turn around and leave. And you're like, well, hang on. Tell me what's up. Is that getting better? I mean, is the technology becoming more responses built into the analysis side, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. That convergence between SIM and SOAR has been key for that. The adoption based upon the end user clients I've talked to varies, but with most more mature security operations programs, they have a security analytics solution that incorporates both the detection and the investigation and response elements. Of course, solutions like EDR are still very important and serve largely as inputs into this process. But now with the advent of XDR, my hope is that it will also accelerate the security analytics platform side into just providing better information for analysts, making their lives easier.
So for folks that might listen to this, for the 3 people that get bored and listen to me talk, what's the difference between EDR and XDR? What's the Farmer Joe version of what that difference is?
Yeah, so endpoint detection and response, aka EDR, is basically an agent that sits on the endpoint, takes in different behaviors and things happening on the endpoint in order to determine malicious activity, and then allows the analyst to investigate and respond based on those detections. XDR takes this, and really it's endpoint detection and response vendors. They take this and they say, okay, this is cool, but ultimately incident responders need a lot more information about what's happening in the environment, and they need to be able to remediate across more aspects of the environment. And kind of in seeing EDR reach something close to maturity, they've said, all right, we're gonna jump the shark, some might say, and incorporate more sources of telemetry for investigation and also for response and remediation. And so that's where the core difference comes in between EDR and XDR. Now, all of that said, I have to caveat this with, there are a lot of vendors claiming XDR right now just because it is such a hot topic. But when it boils down to something that's differentiated from security analytics platforms, that's what XDR is.
So do you think it's more organizations need XDR, or do they need EDR, or is there a line in the sand between the two? Because I mean, typically enterprise has different stuff than small and mid-size. Which one kind of works better for which side of that equation?
One of the cool things about XDR being the evolution of EDR, and this is how I talk about it with our end users as well, is that the line is very blurry. So typically what I recommend is for end user clients to adopt EDR first, get used to EDR, make sure that they're evaluating their EDR with XDR in mind for the future, and then just start adopting additional sources of telemetry into EDR as needed. And then you're going to reach the point of using XDR anyway. That makes the transition a lot smoother, and it also doesn't add yet another tool into the SOC, which is a problem that no one wants. So the line is really blurry ultimately because EDR is kind of being consumed by XDR since it is that next evolution.
So that's where it's going. The market's evolving to XDR, kind of whether you like it or not, is pretty fair to state.
Exactly. And it's very much so like the transition from endpoint protection to EDR, where like typically organizations will adopt antivirus, next generation antivirus, endpoint protection platforms, and then they'll add on EDR as they get more analysts on the team, get more budget. The next phase of that is then to go, okay, now I'm going to leap to XDR.
Well, and that brings it to, I think it was number 2 in your breaking it down there, right? Lie number 2, SIMs don't scale. I think that's super interesting because your point said querying at scale is a long recognized challenge of legacy SIMs. Yep. When you intentionally create a big data problem, you've got to find a way to solve it. And I would like to say that that's probably something a lot of people don't do before they actually get into SIM. In my experience, is they'd say all the things, right? Give me all the things and I'll do, SIM-y stuff, and then I'll be able to whatever. So and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're saying there is like, you'll do better with this if you actually have a plan for the scale for the technologies. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think that's definitely a part of it. It's kind of a two-pronged thing because depending on the organization, some organizations are ultimately going to have a ridiculous amount of data no matter what they do, whether or not they're fine-tuning the telemetry sources and log sources they're bringing into the SIM or not. And in those cases, there are actually specialized security analytics solutions built for those use cases specifically. And so it's two things. It's managing the data that you have coming in, making sure that it's actually adding value. And then on the other hand, it's also identifying when that's maybe not a possibility for your organization, which is not most organizations, to be clear, and adopting a solution that can actually address those problems more effectively.
Well, that jumps down. So skipping the one where I think you did a great job right there, breaking it down, like, lie number 3, security teams hate their SIM. You're like, no, that's kind of not really true.
Literally just do a survey on it and you get the results.
God forbid you ask people, right?
I know.
Well, your number 5 there, lie number 5, SIM is dead. And I think that was great that you said it's tad ridiculous and overblown. SIMs remain a core part of the security operations stack for most enterprises. And according to this report, expanding monitoring, not stifling it. And I guess that leads me to the question that I have there is, if the SIM market is grown and has gotten as big as it is and people like it and it's continuing to do, quicker, better, faster, including response, whatever else, like where's the ceiling on this? Where does it kind of go, or what's going to be required for the next evolution of this? Because we're getting to a place where I think ML models and the ability to do things in an automated fashion are kind of catching up with the basic response needs.
Yes, I totally agree. I think it's kind of a layered issue here because people like what they're used to. It's like who was it?
It's hard. No one likes being comfortable, right?
Yeah, and it was Ford who said, like, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. That's where we are at right now with this, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about XDR is because I think that it pushes the boundaries in a different way than precedent has told us things need to be done by basing detections in high efficacy data sources. And that takes a very different path than security analytics platforms have. Now, while people do like their SIM, while people do like the tools that they're using in the SOC right now, they're still struggling with high false positive rates. There's still a lot of manual tuning that needs to happen. There's still a lot of playbooks that they have to generate themselves. That automation is arguably behind where I think it should be with regards to actually being able to recommend response actions in an automated fashion. And these are areas for optimization that security analytics platforms have had, like 10 to 20 years to do. And we're seeing this innovation happening on the EDR and now the XDR side. And I think that's going to push security analytics platforms to do the same at hopefully a faster rate than they have previously.
That's a great Henry Ford quote. My other favorite Henry Ford quote was, you can have any color you want in a car as long as it's black.
I like that one.
Yeah, when they were asking him about, like, what do we do about other colors? Have any color you want as long as it's black. Okay, fair. I guess I'll stick with black. So I actually went and crawled through some of your past publications that you've done, specifically the one at Black Hat, right? Your stuff around Stripe.
Yeah.
I thought that was just great. Did you get like a bug bounty from Stripe for that, or did they send you, I don't know, a Tesla or something? Because you cracked a pretty big hole in that model.
That was, oh gosh, you're taking me back, 2015. Yeah, it was actually Square. It was the Square reader.
That's right.
That, so I was in college at the time, and it was during a very, anxious Thanksgiving break that I was trying to figure out what research I was going to do for this class. And so I was very lucky that, like, basically my instinct to pull things apart and try to break them worked out okay. But no, they actually refused to accept it as a vulnerability and did not award us a bounty for that, unfortunately. And so that was kind of like my moment where I was like, all right, then we're going to take it to Black Hat. I'm going to go on CNN and talk about this, and you're going to have to deal with the consequences of that. So it worked out in the end okay. But
then what? Did they at least like send you an email and say we should chat about this, or was it
no, nothing
on the front porch? Like nothing, huh? They just
nothing. I know. I was like, oh.
Man, that's rough. I mean, because that was really cool that you guys were able to basically figure out a way to get, kind of, I was almost sort of man in the middle-ish for what you were doing and the way that you were able to intercept that stuff. And I if I was those folks, I would have flipped out when I saw somebody doing that, especially taking, oh, hey, by the way, we're going, like I just said, whatever you need to keep your mouth shut, I will send it to you.
No, it was really cool. That was like my introduction to security, and it was just awesome. Such a fun project. That whole class was fun, to be honest. We got to hack a server for our midterm, and that was just great. And our final too, we got to defend a server for our final. And that project was such a good introduction to security for sure.
That's because you went to Boston, right?
Boston University. Yeah. I'm computer engineering.
You don't have the Boston, the accent, how far do you park your car from the bar?
Not that many people actually have that accent.
Yeah. Well, it's fair because I'm from Texas, and people all the time go like, "Well, you don't sound like you're from Texas." And it's it's there. It's just buried underneath years of refinement and effort to get away from it.
Yeah. I can tell you one thing. I've definitely never heard Jeff call you refined.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a very fair statement. And speaking of Jeff, how is it working with the fastest talking man in cybersecurity?
I mean, it's frustrating on advisory. I can't get a word in edgewise.
Yeah,
but it's good.
Yeah, he's a brilliant guy. I just wish that he's from the South too. And the first time we went to an advisory and he started talking, I was like, "You're from down south?" Because whoa.
I know. Yeah, I am from New Hampshire originally, the north of. The south of the north.
Okay.
Yeah. But still talking like pretty normal, I think. Normal speed.
Yeah. Well, so follow on to that since we're having a little bit of that sidebar. So you said in your early interview that your early first blog, I think it was one of your favorite movies for hacker stuff, and you even said it, which I agreed with, like you were like, I think Ender's Game is kind of it. Yeah, which is super. If that's your favorite, what's your least favorite? Like, what's the worst hacker movie that you think there is in existence? There's a bunch.
Oh my God, that's so hard.
Swordfish, I would say, is number one with a bullet in my opinion, because my God, that movie is absolutely just crazy. Yeah, it is such a stereotype, just terrible. Yeah.
That's the problem, is like they're all so, I don't know. I think what we do is cool. It doesn't have to be like theatrical.
No, and my favorite thing about that movie when I watched it was like he's building his piece of malware, but it has these cubes, and nothing works until one cube fits in at the end. But the only way to get it there is by drinking lots of wine and yelling at the computer. Like, okay.
I mean, I do that. I do drink lots of wine and yell at the computer, so halfway.
Yeah, well, I guess that's 50% accurate. The other one was bad was Black Hat, where the bad guy's code is in red for some reason. Right? It was like that's not how that works.
No. God.
But it was Chris Hemsworth, so at least it was worth watching in lots of different ways, I guess, for certain people.
Does that include you?
Hey, I mean, the dude's worth looking at. I mean, what can you say?
It's true.
I mean, don't hate, right? The other piece I would like to kind of pick at is you got away with writing stuff on a topic area that I would love to see people go at more, was adapt or die. And again, I'm too poor to read that valuable research, but I'd like to pick your brain a bit more, because I tried to figure it out looking at what I could find publicly available. But what's the whole adapt or die thing? By the way, badass title name, well done, like knocked it out of the park.
Thank you. I'm very happy that I could have such a cool title for my first Forrester report.
You crushed it. That's a home run right off the bat.
Yeah. So that report is all about XDR and SIM and SOAR and how they're on a collision course. And really, the overarching theme beyond just what we've talked about before, talking about the differences between XDR, SIM, and SOAR, is one of my priorities for my research into security operations is to highlight how we need to make the analyst and make the tools in the SOC more adaptable to the changing environment that the analyst is dealing with. Because a lot of the automation that we're using right now is really breakable. It's really dependent upon a very specific set of things and an analyst consistently tuning and altering playbooks, and ultimately it's not giving us the ability to adapt to situations quickly. We saw this last year with the pandemic. And so what I really want to do is see how we can kind of push innovation and technology in the direction of adapting so the analyst doesn't necessarily have to in different ways. And so that was a large point of this, is because I think that XDR is a step in that direction towards using automation to improve resilience through adaptability.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a heck of a lot. And I think it's interesting too that you've taken the position of being on the kind of, I guess you'd say, the analyst side, right? Because we get a lot of stuff that comes from up above the muckety mucks, and we get a lot of folks on the budget side. But you're taking, again, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're taking the position of this is what analysts need to do the work more effectively.
Totally, yeah. I think that, no joke, analysts have the worst job in the world. And not industry analysts, like security analysts have the worst job in the world.
I was going to say, like, that's not, I mean, you're an analyst, right? Like you realize you do this for a living.
No, but security analysts in particular, like, they're just stuck in the SOC. A lot of times it's in a basement. It's like not fun at all. And I just think it would be great for us to make that a little easier for them. And obviously it's never going to be a little less stressful, but we ultimately need it when we're seeing symptoms of that through the skills gap and through the challenges that a lot of security teams are facing, and then also the challenges with toxicity in the community and toxicity in different organizations. So I think that tools, it's obviously like you can't have a silver bullet for that type of thing, but tools can help us get to the point where we can at least provide paths for professional development for people entering this field that are more effective than what we're doing right now.
So do you think that the lack of talent in the space, I personally think that it's a lot of hooey. I mean, well, not a lot of hooey. I think that it's overhyped, because I mean, if we have really good technology, you can kind of do what you need in most instances with the people that you have. But what do you think about, the space in general, as far as like, are we doomed because it's too short of humans? Do we need more effective tech? Like what does it actually look like?
No, I think so. This was actually my first blog for Forrester too, which was don't take the humans out of security operations and like the importance of humanizing security operations. I think that we put qualifications on roles like the security analyst job that are not necessarily the things that we need from security analysts in order for them to exceed and like excel in that role. I think that that's a major part of our problems. And you know what? I wasn't even aware of how deep this went until actually Jeff Pollard and Steve Turner wrote a blog on how having a degree requirement was poisoning your cybersecurity talent pool.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And I was expecting that to go over so well with everyone. And there were people who were commenting like, if they don't have a degree, I don't want them in my SOC. And why would you take these chickens and not have eagles? Like weird things. Yeah.
Like cyber haterade. It was bad. I remember that. I was like, wow, Jeff, you stirred up a hornet's nest here.
Yeah. In this thing that I thought would be like, I thought everyone would agree with it. So that to me was really, really interesting. And I think, honestly, I think those people are completely wrong. One of the things that we know, one of the things that's so cool about this space is that you have to have a diverse perspective. Otherwise, you are going to fail. Like, that's why we have red teamers, is because we need to take a different perspective to understand the attacker perspective. And so if we're just going to, like, if attackers are going to be whoever wants to make money, we need to have that diversity and be able to show those differences in opinions. I don't want every person that went to BU and got a computer engineering degree in my SOC. You know, I want differentiation. I want people thinking of different things, looking at the problem in different ways. So I think that that's what's holding us back, is people who just, they're unwilling to accept diverse viewpoints.
But how do I know how super good you'll be at the job if you don't have a list of things behind your name this long that tell me that you've taken classes to say how awesome you are?
Oh my God.
Crazy.
It's so true.
You know, like the day that I lost my faith in the whole cert and training thing was I took, and this is going to date me because I'm now, but like I took the ultimate hacking class when I was first, rolling off into this. And they said at the end of it, any way you can get the target, do your thing, go bonkers, da, da, da. And I found a really easy back door. It took me like 15, 20 minutes. And I was like, I'm done. And they came back and they huddled and they looked around and they go, no, sorry, they go back and do it, the way that's in the script. And I was like,
oh God.
Yeah. I was like, well, wait a minute. This is ultimate hacking. And you just told me I can't. And then I wouldn't change my play. And they said, well, we're not going to give you your cert. And I was like, come on. Like, really? Yeah. Yeah. That was not like, that was like, fuck it. I'm out. I'm done. I've had enough,
It's the exact opposite of what needs to be done. Like, we need to promote the creativity.
Yeah. And I mean, if you've ever like been on the hiring side and brought somebody in, and I'm sure there's folks that have, where got this much stuff on their resume as far as alphabet soup, and then you go do this and they look at it with that sort of deer in the headlights glazed over look, and you're like, all right. Yeah. But they're certified, so I should hire you.
It happens often. It's like they have these amazing resumes, but I don't know where the disconnect is, Yeah, it's not everyone, but there's some cases.
I think that it's kind of the training industry and has created this monster, and they have to continue to feed the beast because they built it. Yeah,
that makes sense. Sometimes I've seen this in some classes that I've mentored. It's just they teach best practices, but one of the things is like when you actually have to do it, the best practices, there are reasons that everyone isn't implementing the best practices. They're like legitimate challenges to this, and they just don't get that perspective.
Yeah, it's not based on reality, right? It's based on perception, I guess. I don't know.
Like, Dr. Zero Trust. If everyone could do zero trust in like 20 days or something, it would be great. But like, it's not the reality.
By the way, I love that you joined with your Twitter handle underneath it, because you're the first person that's done that. So now I can say we're both branding. Branding is done.
Priorities.
It's all branding matters. Oh, well, okay. So you also wrote some stuff about the Biden EO, and you were on a webinar and whatnot. Well, I mean, what's your perception of the whole EO? Is it the right thing to do? Are we doing more? Is it just paperwork? Like, what's up with that?
If it is just paperwork, a lot of people are writing paperwork because there was a lot covered there. I think that steps like this are really important. I think that cybersecurity, one of the reasons that I'm so interested in cybersecurity is because I'm also a big national security buff. I love classes like the history of war, obsessed. And so I think this is a step in the positive direction to get cybersecurity defense the recognition that it needs. I kind of talked about this in the webinar, but historically we've seen so much money funneled into attacker activities, especially at the nation state level, and that's all well and good. But now maybe my hope is that this is a step in the direction to put that types of money towards the actual defense side of things too, which would be like, it's a pipe dream, but even a little bit would be better than where we're at right now. And I think that we need a leader, especially a superpower like the United States, leading the charge on this. We've seen Europe starting to do it, but I think that ultimately, much like with many other initiatives, if the U.S. isn't involved in it, then it's missing a core piece of the puzzle. Saying that as an American.
Yeah, nobody from America wants to lose to the Europeans in anything, right? So
yeah, exactly. Or the Russians.
Yeah, we got to beat them to the punch. Because I thought that was a good piece of documentation. Like you said, I'm personally hopeful that we see a bit more sort of line item stuff. And I guess for me, a question I had, I'd love to get your thoughts on it, is I didn't see a whole lot of stuff in there about this person or this entity shall do this. I heard them write off a lot of stuff and kind of give some guidance and requirements, but I don't think that they quite said who's going to do what, where, and with what. I know that I'm on the working group that's doing stuff for the DISA Thunderdome proposal and whatever, but like I haven't seen anyone kind of say in Dominic's pottery, this is who's running this show.
Yeah. So this is what's really interesting, because on one level I agree with you. Like there was direct orders around who was going to be doing like writing the actual like requirements and proposals, but the execution of that was kind of blurry, and it seems like those are going to be in future documents. The exception is CISA, because this definitely positions CISA as taking a much larger role within the federal government in cybersecurity as a whole, and kind of gave them the behind the scenes power that in a lot of ways they've had publicly, but haven't had behind the scenes, haven't had privately. So I'm really interested to see where that goes. I think that CISA so far has done some really good work. And I think that if they're given the resources to accomplish it, they can do a lot of really good work based off of what was listed in this executive order. But as we know, much like every security team on the planet, they are understaffed and under-resourced right now. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's couldn't get more dead on point than with that. I mean, they got to have the resources to do the work. Otherwise, you can write it down all day long. It's not going to happen,
No, no accountability.
Well, okay, so wrapping up on just I guess I told you there's a dog.
You did. Puppies.
I've done so many like calls and webinars and whatever else over the course of the last year that now I just flat out don't care. Like the dog's gonna bark. It is what it is.
We all know it's happening from home.
Yeah, he's my wireless doorbell. Like whatever. It's better than having Ring. So. So I mean, you're just rocking and rolling and doing great things industry wise. Like you've come from where you've come from, and you're super technical, but you're also doing stuff that's big picture. I like to kind of get people to give a bit of insight on, like, on a personal level, like what's your drive, or what's your thing that you do that continues to make you do things? Like, how do you wake up in the morning and go, this is how I kick ass and take names and just, push the envelope forward?
Oh, that's a great question.
I mean, it's one of the ones you kind of, until you really realize it, well, a lot of times people haven't even asked themselves that, like, why do I push as hard as I do? Because you all do with all the success you're having.
Yeah, thank you. I really love security. I really love what I do. That certainly makes it a lot easier. I also love to question things. Everybody is always like, oh my God, Allie, stop asking so many questions. And so this is kind of a natural fit for me. I am also very kind of talking back to a little bit what I was saying earlier, very obsessed with like the history of war and the way that war is evolving and national security. And I see cybersecurity over the next however many years, hundreds of years, playing such a critical role in that I'm really excited to be a part of that, even in some small way. And I want to keep thinking about these problems and hopefully help people with it, you know?
No, I get it. Like I love the space too. I wake up and think, how blessed am I that I get to work in a space where I actually enjoy the things that I do. Yeah, I mean, there's days that suck. So what?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Well,
no, and also the community is so great. Like there's so many cool people in this space that you can talk to and get such interesting perspectives from. And I don't know, it's just great.
Yeah, we got some real characters too, you know. There's plenty of those folks. It's great to always be surrounded with people that are smarter than you, and typically, in my case, usually have way more personality than me. So,
no, it's true though. There's so many smart people, and especially I found at Forrester, like everybody is so smart. They all know their space so well. It's been so great working with everyone there.
Yeah, I wait for the day that they'll let me come back and sweep the floors. You know, every once in a while I ping Jeff and JP or JB, and I'm like, you need a janitor or something, because I used to work. Great people, though. Well, look, I really appreciate you taking the time. I love the work that you're doing. Amazing stuff. I can't wait to see the rest of it come on. And thanks for taking the the wherewithal to talk with somebody about XDR and EDR and adapter die and all the awesome stuff you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.